What if Putin just exposed the real reason behind Netanyahu's growing fear of Iran? The truth goes far beyond nuclear weapons. It's about control, alliances, and the biggest power shift the Middle East has seen in decades. Stay tuned. This revelation could change everything you thought you knew about global politics. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story dives deep into one of the most surprising geopolitical moments of the year. Vladimir Putin revealing the truth behind Benjamin Netanyahu's concern over Iran. This revelation has shaken the foundations of Middle Eastern politics and could redefine global power alignments. Over the next 10 sections, we'll unpack what Putin actually said, why it matters, and how it could shift the balance between Israel, Iran, and Russia. We'll also explore the deeper meaning behind Netanyahu's increasing anxiety about Iran's rise, and how Moscow's involvement has turned this regional rivalry into a worldwide chess game. This isn't just about nuclear talks or sanctions. It's about who controls the narrative, who gains influence, and who loses power as the world's focus pivots back to the Middle East. Whether you follow global politics or simply want to understand why Putin's words sent shockwaves through Israel's leadership, this breakdown will connect all the dots. So let's start by understanding the background, why Netanyahu's fear of Iran goes far beyond weapons and touches the very core of Israel's security and survival doctrine. Benjamin Netanyahu has built much of his political career around portraying Iran as Israel's greatest existential threat. From fiery speeches at the United Nations to urgent warnings to the West, he's long argued that Tehran's nuclear ambitions could one day wipe Israel off the map. But according to Putin's recent remarks, Israel's true concern runs deeper than just Iran's nuclear program. Behind closed doors, Israeli officials have quietly admitted that a full-scale war with Iran would be catastrophic, not only for Israel's security, but for the entire regional economy. Putin revealed that Netanyahu's government has privately told Moscow that Israel prefers diplomatic containment over open conflict. This shift is monumental. It means that while Israel publicly drums up fears of an Iranian bomb, it is quietly acknowledging that a war would spiral out of control. Putin's disclosure also reveals Israel's strategic anxiety. If Iran stabilizes its relations with Russia and China, Israel's position as the dominant regional power could crumble. Netanyahu fears not just missiles, he fears a multipolar Middle East where Western influence no longer guarantees Israel's supremacy. Putin's words hint that Israel's long-standing narrative might finally be losing traction. Vladimir Putin's revelation didn't come from nowhere. For years, Russia has maintained relationships with both Israel and Iran, a rare diplomatic balancing act. But this time, Putin made his position crystal clear. Moscow is ready to act as a mediator between the two rivals. According to reports, Russia has passed messages directly between Jerusalem and Tehran, urging both to avoid military escalation. Putin's statement that Israel does not seek war with Iran wasn't just a comment, it was a strategic move. It positioned Russia as the voice of reason in a region long dominated by U.S. interventionism. By taking on this mediator role, Putin strengthens Russia's soft power in the Middle East, offering dialogue where the West offers weapons. This also helps Moscow project stability at a time when it faces Western sanctions and diplomatic isolation. By revealing Netanyahu's private concerns, Putin cleverly paints Russia as the peacemaker while exposing the contradictions in Israeli rhetoric. For Iran, it's an opportunity to gain moral ground. For Israel, it's a diplomatic embarrassment. Their public stance has been undermined by the very leader they sought to court. Russia's mediation reshapes not only perception, but also power itself. Behind Putin's diplomacy lies a far bigger strategy, reshaping the Middle East order to favor Moscow and its allies. By playing mediator, Russia inserts itself as the central power broker in a region long dominated by the US. Every meeting, every message, every leak from Putin's office is carefully calculated. Russia knows that if it can control communication between Iran and Israel, it effectively controls the tempo of conflict in the Middle East. This control gives Moscow enormous leverage over oil markets, trade routes, and Western foreign policy. Netanyahu's concern, therefore, isn't only about Iran's nuclear capacity, it's about losing influence to Russia. For decades, Israel has relied on Washington to dictate Middle Eastern power balances. Now, with Putin positioning himself as a peacekeeper and the US struggling with divided domestic politics, Israel's leverage is fading. Iran, meanwhile, benefits from this chaos. The more divided the world's great powers become, the freer Tehran is to expand its influence from Syria to Lebanon to the Persian Gulf. Putin understands this dynamic perfectly, and he's using it to make Russia indispensable in every regional negotiation. Iran's response to Putin's revelation has been measured but strategic. Tehran confirmed that Moscow had relayed a message from Israel indicating that it did not want a full-scale war. Iranian officials acknowledged Russia's effort, but also questioned Israel's sincerity. Iran's foreign ministry said it welcomes diplomacy but remains vigilant against deceit. This cautious tone reflects Tehran's deep skepticism of Western and Israeli promises. For decades, Iran has faced sanctions, covert operations, and cyber attacks, all while being accused of aggression. So, when Putin exposed Netanyahu's private concerns, Iranian leaders saw both opportunity and risk. On one hand, it validated Iran's claim that Israel uses the threat narrative for international sympathy and military funding. On the other, it reminded Tehran that even friendly mediators like Moscow can use diplomacy for their own gain. Yet Iran's broader reaction was pragmatic: continue cooperation with Russia and China, strengthen domestic defense, and wait for Israel's next move. In doing so, Iran avoids escalation while benefiting from the image of restraint. Putin's revelation didn't just expose Israel. It allowed Iran to appear as the calm actor in a region addicted to tension. Following Putin's statement, Netanyahu attempted to reassert control over the narrative. In a recent address, he warned that if Israel's operations are successful, regime change in Iran could be the result. This was a bold and risky declaration. For Russia, such rhetoric crosses a red line. Putin immediately rejected the notion, saying he refused to even discuss regime change in Tehran. Russia views stability in Iran as crucial for maintaining its influence across the region. Netanyahu's comments, however, serve a domestic purpose: to project strength amid growing political pressure at home. Israel faces protests, coalition rifts, and security tensions on multiple fronts, including Gaza and Lebanon. By invoking Iran, Netanyahu rallies nationalist support and distracts from internal turmoil. Yet Putin's revelation makes this harder to sustain. The contradiction between Israel's private fear of escalation and its public talk of regime change exposes a dangerous double game. If Netanyahu continues this approach, he risks alienating Moscow, one of the few powers capable of restraining Iran's hardliners. It's a gamble that could backfire dramatically, isolating Israel at a moment when regional alliances are shifting faster than ever. Despite public tensions, Russia remains careful not to take sides. Putin's message was not pro-Iran or anti-Israel. It was pro-Russia. His goal is to position Moscow as the indispensable broker for peace and influence. When Western powers isolate Russia, Putin expands his presence elsewhere, and the Middle East is the perfect arena. By revealing Netanyahu's private fears, Putin signals to Tehran that Russia understands its security concerns. At the same time, he assures Israel that Moscow can restrain Iran diplomatically. This calculated neutrality makes both sides dependent on Russia's involvement. Moreover, it strengthens Putin's hand in global negotiations, including with China and the Gulf states. Every time conflict seems imminent, Russia presents itself as the voice of stability and collects diplomatic credit. It's a masterclass in strategic ambiguity. The West may call it manipulation, but for Moscow, it's pragmatic geopolitics. Putin's disclosure, therefore, wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was a deliberate reminder that no power move in the Middle East can happen without Russia's awareness or approval. By controlling the narrative, Putin quietly becomes the region's unofficial referee. The Middle East is no longer a unipolar region dominated by the US and its allies. Putin's revelation proves that power is now distributed among multiple actors: Russia, China, Iran, and even Turkey. The rise of alternative alliances, from BRICS expansion to new trade corridors, is challenging Western hegemony. Israel, long seen as the region's strategic anchor for the West, now faces the uncomfortable reality of declining influence. As Russia strengthens ties with Iran, China builds economic corridors through the Gulf, and Saudi Arabia explores non-US defense partnerships, the regional order is shifting rapidly. Putin's comments about Netanyahu are just one symptom of this deeper transformation. It's not about who fires the next missile, it's about who controls the next deal. The future of the Middle East will depend less on ideology and more on pragmatism. For now, Moscow stands at the center of this new balance, with Washington watching from the sidelines. Netanyahu's concern, once seen as paranoia, now reflects genuine anxiety, the fear that the world is moving on without Israel at its core. This revelation doesn't stop at the Middle East. The geopolitical tremors are being felt from Washington to Beijing. For the US, Putin's mediation undermines decades of diplomatic dominance. America's influence in the region is shrinking as countries diversify partnerships. For Europe, especially nations dependent on Middle Eastern energy, stability now depends on Russia's diplomatic hand. In Asia, powers like India and Pakistan must carefully balance their relations with Tehran and Moscow to avoid being caught in the crossfire of new alliances. The Iran-Israel rivalry has always carried global implications, but with Putin's involvement, it's now part of a larger great power competition. The shift from a US-centric order to a multipolar one means new rules, new risks, and new opportunities. Even global markets react: oil prices, defense stocks, and regional trade deals all fluctuate based on these revelations. What started as a diplomatic leak has turned into a signal that the world is entering a post-Western era of balance, where influence is traded, not dictated. So what does Putin's revelation really mean? In essence, it has exposed the hidden fears behind Netanyahu's tough rhetoric and proven that diplomacy, not war, is shaping the next phase of Middle Eastern politics. Israel fears losing dominance, Iran seeks respect through restraint, and Russia quietly claims the role of regional architect. This is the new triangle of power, unpredictable, strategic, and deeply interdependent. For viewers, the key takeaway is this: the Middle East's future won't be decided by missiles or sanctions alone, but by narratives and negotiations. Putin understands this better than anyone. His revelation wasn't just about exposing Netanyahu. It was about reminding the world that Russia still holds the strings to global stability. The old order is fading, and a new geopolitical reality is emerging, one where alliances are fluid and influence is earned through dialogue. If you found this analysis insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more deep dive geopolitical stories from across the world. Drop your thoughts below. Do you think Putin's strategy is genuine diplomacy or calculated manipulation? Let's discuss.